Good morning, everyone. Wonderful to see so many of you here today as Sustainable San Mateo County launches its 29th annual indicators report, Local Food Actions for a Cooler Future. I'm Sarah Hubbard, Executive Director of SSMC. For those of you who may not know us, Sustainable San Mateo County is a nonprofit founded in 1992 to advance sustainability right here in our county. Our work centers on supporting local leaders, like many of you, in adopting policies and programs that move sustainability forward. We define sustainability through what we call the 3 E's: the environment, the economy, and social equity. All 3 need to work together for communities to thrive. And while state and national action is important, we believe local jurisdictions can make a real difference through the policies you pass, the programs you support, and the way you communicate with the public. SSMC is committed to providing trusted data and practical insights that help our communities make informed decisions for a sustainable future. This year, our indicators report addresses the climate impacts of food, focusing on aspects that local communities have the most influence over: consumption, recovery, and waste management, all of which affect greenhouse gas emissions. For cities and the county, these are critical issues. Food is often overlooked in climate planning, yet globally it contributes 34% of greenhouse gas emissions and 60% of methane emissions. In San Mateo County, food is the 3rd largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. So, what can we do to address this? Well, spoiler alert, we can directly influence food-related emissions through policy, education, and community programs. This year's indicators report reviews local government commitments and identifies key challenges and opportunities to reduce food-related emissions. I want to take a moment to recognize the incredible work of the interns and volunteers listed here who poured their energy into this project, and to thank the city and county staff, the nonprofit collaborators, the waste management partners, and other community members who shared their time, data, and perspectives through surveys, interviews, and content review. A special thanks to Ben Gould of EcoData Lab and Professor Christopher Jones of UC Berkeley for sharing the data on food consumption emissions. Many of you here also contributed to our research. While the full list of collaborators is too long to go through here, their names and agencies are listed on page 7 of the report's introductory section. Without you and many others, this report and its recommendations would not have been possible. So thank you. We're also grateful to the sponsors that have supported this report launch event, shown here on the screen, as well as the organizations who are here today sharing information and resources at the tables in the back. And of course, for the donation of pastries by Copenhagen Bakery in Burlingame. I hope you're enjoying them. First up on today's agenda is Simona Vallone, our program manager and the report's coordinator and prime author. She'll provide an overview of the report and set the stage for today's 3 speakers. We'll have an opportunity for questions and answers after each speaker, and then make a few closing remarks and have additional time for networking, which clearly you all like to do. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Simona Vallone to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you again to all the contributors and to all the stakeholders, staff managers, and that helped us making this happen. So going straight into the report, this year we researched the connection between the food system and greenhouse gas emissions and what we can do locally to mitigate those emissions. So to start, we say when we say food system, we really mean everything that has to involve food. So farming, production, transportation, consumption, all the way to waste management. So food systems are one of the largest contributor to greenhouse gases, but also one of the least addressed drivers of climate change. This chart shows the global greenhouse gas emissions by sector. The data comes from the IPCC, the UN scientific body reporting on leading climate science. According to the data, agricultural production accounts for 22% of the total greenhouse gas emissions, shown here in yellow. Of these 22%, half are due to deforestation, which is primarily caused by the clearing of the land for grazing animals and grow crops to feed the animals. About a quarter of the direct emissions come from animals, particularly methane-producing livestock, such as cows. And another 25% comes from other practices, such as soy tilling and rice cultivations. In addition to the emission from food production itself, growing food, farming, clearing the land, there are other emissions related to the food systems. They are counted under other sectors. For example, refrigeration, cooking, processing are counted under energy. Food waste is counted under industry sector. So when we combine all those emissions, we find that 34% of total emission are linked to the global food system. But not all food have the same climate impact. Animal products alone are responsible for 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions and 50% of all methane that comes from the food system. When we look at different foods like those in the chart and the emission through the entire supply chain, foods that derive from animals, which are marked by the red arrows in the chart, have much higher carbon footprint. Production, the light green and the pink portion of the chart bar, are much larger contributor to the overall emissions of each food than transportation, for example. Beyond climate, the food system places intense pressure on ecosystems, driving fresh water depletion, biodiversity loss, and pollution of air and waterways. And a significant portion of the resources invested in making the food is lost every year. Globally, 30 to 40% of all food produced is never eaten. And that statistic is true also for California. When food is wasted, so are the land, the water, the energy, the labor that was invested in producing it, along with all those emissions that were released. So, like for the energy transition, which combine clean energy expansion with efficiency improvements in building and industry, transforming our food system will require both shifting towards food with lower carbon emissions and wasting less, making better use of the resources we already invest in growing the food. So this report focuses on two of the most impactful levers for reducing food-related emissions, which are food consumption and food waste. So the first chapter in the report covers food consumption and provides a breakdown of the county-wide emissions related to food, an overview also of the commitments of our local governments and what is happening in our county from the point of view of key stakeholders. Looking at the data, food consumption accounts for 17% of the total household emissions in San Mateo County. Emission linked to food consumption ranks third after transportation and services. Think of healthcare, entertainment for services. Here's the breakdown of the emissions from 6 categories of food that we consume at home. Animal-derived products, such as meat and dairy, accounted for 45% of all emissions. And the average per capita emission from food consumption is 2.2 metric tons of CO2 equivalent, the yellow bar on the right hand. That's the average in the county, but the footprints vary across communities. And these differences reflect a mix of demographic and socioeconomic factors such as household size and income. Since climate action plans, also known as CAPs, offer a window into the commitment of the jurisdictions to address emissions, we reviewed them and found that most climate action plans actually give a little attention to food consumption. Overall, all dimensions were marginal, and we didn't really identify any developed concrete strategy or actions. The interview we conducted with sustainability managers across the country show a lot of promise. They point to opportunity in education, municipal procurement, and emission tracking. And there is a lot of openness to collaboration and partnership. But the progress will likely depend on regional leadership and shared resources to help expand plan forward option and connect them to the health and the well-being of our community. When looking at the public school in our county, we found that most districts already offer, for example, a daily vegetarian option. And our survey showed interest in expanding plant-based choices. Sustainability was the strongest motivator for doing so. Schools said that they need staff support, procurement help, and educational material to make plant-based options more successful. Around the world, local governments are using their economic influence, political will, policy tools, and public visibility to reduce the impact of food consumptions. Many begin with small steps, such as symbolic resolution, and then they expand to procurement policies or binding ordinances. I'm presenting here 5 strategies that local governments can use to lead our community. First, tracking emissions related to food, whether it is at the municipal level or at the community level. Many cities worldwide are already adopting consumption-based inventory as a tool to raise awareness, and they set reduction targets. Lack of awareness is one of the biggest barriers to advancing more sustainable food consumption. Partnership with organizations can really help. The organization Plant-Based Treaty, for example, offer educational material that can be co-branded and co-designed with the city and the county. We are very lucky to have Samantha Lau from Plant-Based Treaty here today, and be sure to stop by their table and take a look at the material. Local governments can increase municipal offering of plant-based options. Many cities begin with small weekly menu initiatives like Green Mondays in government buildings and cafeterias. Others have adopted binding procurement standards to institutionalize sustainability, equity, and health across food purchasing decisions. In 2021, Alameda County adopted the Good Food Purchasing Policy, aligning over $20 million in annual food purchases by the Sheriff Office and Department of Probation with core value of local economies, environmental sustainability, and animal welfare and nutrition. These initiatives builds on a regional momentum following similar adoption by Oakland Unified School District in 2014, then San Francisco Unified, and the city and the county of San Francisco. In 2024, West Hollywood committed to serving plant-based food as the default at all city-sponsored events. And in 2025, this year, Los Angeles County passed a binding motion requiring plant-based standards in over 110 food service contracts, showing how large institutions can drive climate and health impact. Fourth, municipalities and counties can offer financial incentives that encourage institutions and businesses to expand access to climate-friendly foods. This can take the form of grants, rebates, or tax credit designed to offset the perceived or real costs of shifted type of food that's served. For example, Austin, Texas provided food and climate equity mini grants to grassroots organizations and individuals supporting community-driven solutions for sustainable diets. And beyond financial incentive, public recognition can be a powerful driver of change, shifting food norms and encouraging broader participation. When amplified through social media or public events, such recognition can build community awareness and momentum. Switching gears, on our second chapter covers food waste. We look at the trends in solid waste emission across the county. We also draw on interviews with key stakeholders to show where progress is being made and where gaps still exist. Many of you know SB 1383, but here briefly, this is a California law that was signed in 2016 with the goal of cutting methane emissions. One of the ways this is done is by reducing food and organic waste that ends up in our landfills. Why methane? Methane is a far more potent greenhouse gas emission than CO2, but it's also short-lived. So meaning that methane that's emitted today will be gone on average in 10 years. So this can be a really powerful climate action. So per SB 1383, local governments and commercial property and multifamily property and schools must provide organic collection and education. And local government are also tasked to recover the food and ensure compliance. We're very fortunate to have Michael Bromwick, the Vice Chair of Rethink Waste Board, here to tell us more about implementation of SB 1383 in our county. Across California, the organic waste, the fraction of the waste that emits methane, makes up a third of solid waste. So 40% of that is food, as you see on the chart in yellow. And 34% of that food is still edible and can be donated. And while a large part, the non-donatable fraction in the chart, is actually the food that's partially consumed. Like think of the leftover pizza that we forgot in the back of the fridge. Here, the figure shows the per capita solid waste emissions by jurisdiction in San Mateo County and the trends over time. Since 2005, emissions have declined, reaching a county average of about 0.2 metric tons CO2 equivalent per person. And reported values here only include the organics that were sent to the landfill, do not include the emissions from closed landfill, with the exception of Brisbane. Differences across cities often reflect population change or concentration of businesses and non-resident waste generators. You can explore the data more on our sustainability dashboard and of course, in the report. In our climate action plan review, we found that most CAPs commit to reducing organic emission, even those that predate SB 1383. So there's been a long awareness about this issue in our county. Strategies for organic collection are common, but the details vary from broad ordinances to specific actions. Most CAPs mention education, less than half mention procurement, and only 20% of food recovery. Requiring composting at public event is also a less common strategy. From the interview, we found that the biggest challenge is compliance in multifamily and commercial settings, and often low owner engagement make progress difficult. On-site visits and direct outreach help, but repeated education is critical. Cities uses different enforcement approaches. Some take a stricter line, with others focus on education before fines. And haulers play a key role in spotting non-compliance. On food recovery, San Mateo County showed leadership in its countywide ordinance. Today, we're lucky to have Gordon Tong, Waste Reduction Program Manager with the County Sustainability Department. And here is as one of our speakers, and he'll share more about these efforts. I also wanted to acknowledge the many food recovery organization partnering with the county, including Second Harvest, which is also here with us today. Finally, schools are making progress, but our survey revealed that the need of practical resources such as toolkit and staff training. Also, we will have Carrie D, the principal of Green Hills Elementary in Millbrae. She's here with us today and will tell us about how her school is tackling food waste. So we developed 10 recommendations that you'll find on the back of the executive summary and also in our report. And without going into much of detail, this is what we recommend. So we recommend that the jurisdiction include plant-based forward strategies in their climate action plans, launch a county-wide campaign to raise awareness, and expand access to healthy and sustainable food in underserved neighborhoods. We recommend strengthening green bean education, also the adoption of shared table programs in school, expanding compost bin placement in high-use areas, such as downtown, high-traffic parks, and providing stable, flexible funding for recovery or food recovery organization. We recommend establishing a waste ambassador programs in school, sharing key waste metric with the community, and adopting ordinance language that allow residents to report service issues on multifamily and commercial sites. Together, this recommendation will make our county's food system more efficient in its use of resources, minimize the emissions, and expand access to healthy, nutrient-dense, and sustainable food. So with this, I conclude